our book is available to the other professionals a lot of times to hand out when somebody runs into that conversation. Have you started your estate plan yet? Here's a book from someone we work with if you want to get started. It gives a good introduction.
Right,
Um, Great source of credibility that way, right? We have a small book, not too intimidating to sit down and read, to
right.
scan through.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Book More Show. It's Stuart Bell here and joined today by Matt Ferri. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
I'm great. How are you doing today, Stuart?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. I'm excited to share this story with people. Um, the kind of opportunity to get something written that's for this single target audience that starts a conversation in a particular way is, I spend all day talking to people about that kind of thing. And it's so exciting to see other people jump on board with the idea and then kind of maximize it in the way that you have and create something that's out there being used. So excited to share that with people, but why don't we give people a bit of background about you and the practice there and what you guys do?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, again, thank you, Stuart, for allowing me to be on the show. I'm looking forward to it today. And so, more about myself. Obviously, I am an estate planning attorney. I have been in this world for over, let's see, since 2008, right? The time flies by fast
It
here.
does, right?
So, yep, licensed attorney in the state of Michigan. We have colleagues and friends throughout the country, but we're just licensed in Michigan. But it's been a fun journey, fun times, and excited to talk more about how we got through this process and use our book.
Fantastic. So were you in estate planning from the beginning, or were you in a different area of law first and then kind of transitioned into it?
That's a great question. So we started, and I started particularly working for another small law firm, and then ventured out on my own shortly thereafter. And for the first couple years, did a few different things as we learned and as I decided how I wanted to proceed with the rest of my career, in a sense as to how I like helping people. And I found that estate planning and this type of what we do has been great. Pretty much since 2010, I've been doing almost exclusively estate planning and what we call elder law.
Right. It's so interesting. We've got a relatively big footprint with people in the similar industry. And I think kind of it comes from having success and then word spreads and then other people have the idea to make it work for them as well. But also I think it's this idea that when we talk about a conversation starting book versus a traditional book, the idea of starting off something, answering a relatively small but useful question in a way that's accessible and adding value. When you think about estate planning, it's one of those things where everyone's got a kind of a general reckon of what it is, but there's so many nuances and details. So writing something that helps kind of educate and start that conversation, it's just a really accessible way of introducing yourself. So the idea of writing a book, did that come from someone else that you'd seen do it? Was there a pressing question that you wanted to get out there? What was the background to this activity?
For this, actually, it was something that we were considering doing. Another colleague in the financial industry had done a book before, and one of the organizations that I was in and involved with, very much so, had highly spoken well of 90-minute books, got us introduced, and it was pretty much a good story from there on out. Uh,
Right.
it's a fun, easy way to be able to create and write your book.
Definitely, I wasn't the best at homework as a kid. So anyone who gives me projects to do in my own time or things that aren't kind of core, that matrix of important versus urgent, the urgent stuff always crowds out the important stuff. So trying to make it as straightforward as possible. So the book that you wrote was Keeping Control. The ideas that are in it, the introductions to those conversations, talk a little bit about the choice of the market and the choice of which pieces to include and not include. I'm always interested because as we've been in business for any length of time, the subjects that we could write about are almost endless. But narrowing it down to that one that's the pressing conversation at the moment, I'm always interested to what makes people choose their subject as opposed to, or this particular subject as opposed to anything else that they could have written about.
Yeah, for us, we have a pretty tailored market that, it can be a very broad category, right? Everyone needs estate planning, but from those, you shrink it down to who we particularly like to work with, who do we find that we work well with, and how we operate. More people get more out of what we service, how we service them, and what values we provide. So, for us, we work with business professionals and business owners. We're trying to help them avoid leaving a mess behind.
Right.
And for that, the book is a great introduction. It provides them just enough information. We're all busy. We all have limited attention spans, pulled in several directions. Nobody wants to read a 1,000-page book on the subject. They need to know, okay, what are some high level things? The great part about what way we developed our book was to maybe make sure that we can share stories. People want to hear
Yeah.
stories. They want to hear what worked, what didn't, why, how can it apply to my situation, and how can I do or not do what has been done before in other people's lives.
Right.
So that's kind of how we started with some basic education. Again, a lot of our introduction to whomever we're meeting is education first. People need to understand what can we do and how can we do it. What role do we play? What role and how does their family play a part of it, and how we can work together to create this for you. So that's an easy start with the book.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's not, we're not writing books to, what's the best way of describing it? People aren't requesting a copy of the book necessarily because they want the knowledge that's contained within it. It's almost they're requesting it to get the outcome that the book promises. So now, obviously, that's not completely true because we want to educate them and help them in their direction. But it's not like they're going off to then sit an elder law exam or pass some financial qualification. So it's not that level of traditional book writing where the knowledge is the key thing. It's almost the certainty of the journey or the reassurance that they're in the right place or thinking in the right direction, or a revelation that they're not thinking in the right direction and here's a better way of thinking about it. But your point about the stories, that to allow someone to see themselves in a position or to position their experience in the context of estate planning, in your example, the stories help almost more than the words, the descriptions of the techniques or the rules or the guidelines that you're giving them, because it just adds color and depth, I think, and someone can see themselves in the before position and then in the after position to really get that feel that they're moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. And the legal profession lends itself to having people glaze over with the technical. Uh, we're far too easy. And a lot of what we work on in our office, and as I've worked on throughout the years, is trying to keep it at the client level, know exactly what they need to know, be able to provide more depth and detail, as some clients want more, some clients want less, but being able to kind of fill that in as we go and as we learn who fits
Right.
what mold.
Right. And actually, that's such a great point as well, because when we think one of the, in the book Blueprint Scorecard, the book that I wrote to help people with their 8 building blocks to bring the book together, one of those is the idea of beneficial constraints. And it was the one that has the most, it's the least obvious of all of the 8 steps, because people don't automatically think about constraints when they're going into a project. They're kind of thinking of more, not less. But this idea of constraining yourself to the subject matter is obviously one constraint, because otherwise you go off on a tangent. But thinking in terms of constraint as, okay, I want to deliver the right information at the right time. Not that the other information is important or doesn't exist or could be a whole conversation later, but the right point at the right time. Do you find that a lot with people as they come into the door, as you're on Zoom with them more and more these days? It is an element of kind of getting the feel for how much detail they want and kind of watching their eyes to make sure that they don't glaze over. Is that more of an issue these days as people's attention span perhaps gets less or their attention is drawn elsewhere?
I think it really depends. For us, we in our introductory process, the book plays a part of it, but even as our first meetings get going, it's still very high level. We're
Right,
explaining concepts, we're answering questions, and so we can tailor the conversation as people have more pointed questions on a certain subject or a certain area. So we're really able to adjust as necessary, but still keep it as a, within those constraints, right? Most
right.
clients come with I'm looking to do this, right? Because we're not a broad firm. We don't do multiple practice areas. We just have a couple, and that's all we focus on. So people know what they're getting into when they're coming to see us.
Yeah,
So that definitely
yeah.
helps.
Right, they're there for a particular thing. At least the conversation is in the same ballpark. It's not that they're off on very different tangents. It's you're kind of talking about the same thing.
Unless I get off onto tangents about life, right? We talk about life,
Right, which that happens a lot as well. It's
but
it's
that's still part of the journey and part of the process, right? I mean, we're all humans. We're all wanting to know, learn, and figure out how we work together and connect. So that's
right.
been kind of the fun part.
And that's the
Otherwise, you look
oh,
at
sorry.
estate planning and you go, it could be pretty dull and boring, maybe, and very like regimented. So if I don't get the human interaction part of it, then what's the fun?
Right, exactly. And it's the discipline and the speciality and the knowledge that you bring. It's kind of in between the color in between the words or the lines. Sometimes I hear people say that they're concerned about writing too much or giving everything away in the book. And I mean, the first response is kind of, hey, don't flatter yourself. If you were going to write that kind of book already, you would be an author, not whatever you were doing, because that's a very big project and difficult to do. So that's probably not going to happen. But B, with everything that we're doing, you in estate planning, whether you're a attorney in another law practice or financial advisor or florist or outsourcing company or whatever the speciality is, people aren't raising their hand as interested in starting a conversation with you because they want to do it themselves. There's a small minority of people who would do that, and they're not your clients anyway. It's the color that you bring between the words. It's the sitting down with someone and talking about the estate planning details, but then hearing something that resonates and make you realize that, oh, actually, it's this that they really need rather than that we were originally talking about. That's the thing that moves the conversation forwards and brings them from a prospect to a client. So I think an unnecessary concern and almost a step of procrastination, worrying that you're going to give too much in the book. Much better to give the right level of detail at the right time, knowing that it's just the stepping stone to the next part of the conversation. Um, why don't you talk a little bit about how you're using the book at the moment then? So we've had it for a little while now, out there in multiple different places. Give people a few examples about how it's kind of getting in front of people and leading them to getting on your calendar.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, we have the book available in a couple of different formats and a couple of different ways. Um, you know, as clients begin the journey, depending on how they find us, right? We work with other professionals. Our book is available to the other professionals a lot of times to hand out when somebody runs into that conversation. Have you started your estate plan yet? Here's a book from someone we work with if you want to get started. It gives a good introduction.
Right,
Um, Great source of credibility that way, right? We have a small book, not too intimidating to sit down and read, to
right,
scan through. So being able to use it with, what we call, referral partners, things of that nature, that's been a great source. Having it electronically, we can send it out. So it's on our website. People go and find it and request downloads that way. Um, and then the other thing that we've used it at is at even workshops or webinars, being able to offer a giveaway for people to get contact information and those things.
right. That idea of using it as an asset that supports other things that you do, such a great opportunity. I was talking to someone yesterday and we were talking about the touch points into the funnel, the touch points into the world, and whether you're using a book, which is then backed up by the webinar, or using the webinar that's backed up by the book, whether you're using the book as a lead generation tool and then people eventually come in and you're using it to run through as a reminder of the conversations that they've already seen, or people come in for the first time and you use it there in the meeting as a credibility builder and a reinforcement of the things that you're talking about. This idea that once it's created, it can be used in multiple different ways. I was using an analogy that broke down very quickly of kind of like a aircraft carrier that's got lots of different assets that get deployed, and that but they all come back to the mothership, the aircraft carrier. But yeah, this idea that the conversation is consistent all the way through, but it just builds on itself. The
Yeah.
referral partner piece, and then I'll jump back to the webinar actually, but the referral partner piece, is that, how did you find that as a conversation, kind of saying to people where you've already got some kind of relationship that, hey, we've also got this tool that we can use, and it's a great tool that you can give to your clients and add value? Was that an easy conversation and they were appreciative of the extra kind of collateral to build that value with clients? Or was there a kind of a lack of understanding about what you were trying to do?
Uh, no, usually I've oftentimes will bring along a copy of the book with me if if I'm first meeting with someone new. You bring a copy along. Hey, we've had this book. Check it out. If you like it, or whatever. Just provides a little introduction to us. I haven't had a bad experience yet, and I've always had a few people say, "Can I get more books?" Because I want to be able to
Right.
hand them out to clients. There's more of the conversation that we have.
Yeah.
So most people don't have a problem at all. Again, we're not pushing it. We're not looking to sell it traditionally, and
Right.
so it's just
And
information, and it's there as information and help the learning and education. So most of the people that we work with like it and find it as a great tool.
right. Because it's such a subtle way of making an introduction by completely adding value. It's not like you're leaving a business card on the desk and say, hey, give someone my business card. It's adding value I often say that the fact that some information is brought together in the pages of a book and it's on dead trees and some glue down the side of it, the fact that it's in that format carries so much more reciprocity or credibility or authority than exactly the same words on a web page somewhere, that it just oils the conversations and makes things flow a lot faster.
Yeah, it's very much so. And even if they like I said, sometimes people don't even read the whole book. They just want to skim it or take a look at it.
Right, right.
It serves as a useful reminder.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it goes back to this point that most people are requesting a copy because what they want is the outcome, the promise of the solution. They don't actually want the information itself, albeit the information is a useful conveyor to get to the outcome. But it's not like the job of work isn't the entertainment of the words on the page. It's the knowledge to get closer to the solution at the end. It's why we put so much focus on the table of contents as the kind of signposts, the roadmaps to, hey, something on the cover caught my attention. We want them to move to the call to action on the back, and that table of contents is the signpost. So even if they don't read it, like I say, most people skip. It's yes, 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 yes. Okay, here's an easy next step to take.
Absolutely, I agree.
On the you talk about the webinar and then using it in person. Do you yet run through it? Most of my meetings are with people on Zoom rather than in person, just nature of business these days. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult. I kind of often when holding the book up and then kind of trying to point it at the camera and getting it to zoom in. I really should get more. I've got the PDF of it here. I could just screen share, but I'm always forgetting that and kind of physically drawn back towards pointing to something, because what I would do if we were in the meeting, this particular book, is the framework to the way that we operate and suggest that people create their book. So the 8 steps in there, there's almost everything that I say is backed up by something that's in here. So by pointing to it, there's an element of reassurance or reinforcement maybe of the point that I'm trying to make because it's in written words. I sometimes talk about the example of we did a podcast a couple of months ago with Paul Ross, who's a podiatrist, wrote a super short book called My Damn Toe Hurts that was every time I refer to it on the podcast, I always remember that I forget to look up what the condition is. And I promise myself that I'll check for next time. But next time comes around, I keep forgetting what the condition is. But anyway, he wrote this little book on this condition. And it's kind of like a non-surgical solution. If you've tried everything else, then hey, you should really try this. And what he found is that because he had written some things in the book, and then when he was saying them to people for the first time, in person, because they'd already read to it, if he pointed to it in the book, he previously would get some degree of pushback or questioning, or there was a belief element that needed to be closed. Whereas using the book now, that rarely happened because people already were predetermined to the solution, or they'd read the words already, so that when he was saying them, they were hearing words they've seen written in a book, albeit it was his book. So do you find the same, being able to refer to something that people already have a context for kind of speeds up that process?
Well, it's interesting you say that because it makes it more real. It's tangible.
Right,
And so for people to be able to actually pick something up in our digital age nowadays, to be
right.
actually have something tangible and you can put your hands on, it
Yeah.
definitely helps provide that kind of credibility that is already there, should already be there, but it just makes it that much easier.
Right. And reinforces it in a world where there's attention, as we said before, is short. People are on a kind of a yes, yes, yes journey. Yes, I kind of want this solution. Yes, I believe that I'm in the right place towards getting to that meeting and then eventually becoming a client. If you can layer on those yeses and something physical, just as you said, in such a digital world, it's a differentiator and a reinforcing point to one of those yeses.
Yep.
You mentioned the webinars that you guys do, bringing people through the process and educating them a little bit more. How close, I've obviously seen the book, but I haven't seen the webinar. How close is the outline and the structure of the webinar to the book? And any crossover points, was that intentional or coincidental?
More coincidental. Some of them are intentional. We don't actually use the book as an outline for the webinars we've done. Um, Not good or bad or indifferent, just hadn't coordinated or gone that far to do that.
Yeah,
So that's actually, yeah, maybe I'll take that away from today as to seeing how that would work.
right.
Um,
I
and so,
mentioned
yeah, that's perfect.
And I mention it because, again, within the last couple of weeks or so, I had a conversation where this was kind of the focus of the conversation, and their book had 2 or 3 points in it that were referred to in webinar slides, or they were doing like live in-room meeting type things, like small group meetings. So there were 2 or 3 things within the book that was very specific, and it was really like pictures and diagrams. They just used the same assets. So we jumped off talking about that. But as we were getting further into it, it was really this idea of topic bridging, and the webinar was a done and dusted thing, and the book was a done and dusted thing. Both of them can be tweaked and tailored over time. These things aren't etched in stone, so they're all movable. But in the short term, we came to the realization that you don't even need to do that. This idea of topic bridging, of something is written about in the book in one format and something is talked about in the webinar in another format, but we're broadly talking about the same thing. It's just different examples or coming to it from 2 different directions. But a quick sentence bridges those things together, and it immediately amplifies whatever the original point was because it's backed up in a different format. So that, again, that layering on of the yeses and layering on of the examples and the credibility. So I could definitely see a example where, as you're going through the webinar, giving people a copy of the book, and in the webinar, when you're talking about this particular element, tying that back to a story that's in the book, even though it's not exactly the same, it's broadly the same. We're talking about the need to make sure that, I'm going to kill it on the example again, but making sure that your will is up to date. There's actually a great story in the book in chapter 3. We were
Yes.
talking about probate, and then Bob had this realization as we were going through the probate conversation that the will wasn't up to date. And it's such a small opportunity to bridge it together, but in people's minds, it just layers on this, again, reinforcement that they're in the right place and the next yes is the one to take.
Yep. So yeah, correct. And we have woven some of those shared stories together for sure. And some of the concepts
Fantastic.
definitely apply to both. But yeah, that's great. I had
And
one more way that we even use the book, but go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say that it's just that idea of you saying they're weaving the stories together. It's an asset's created here and an asset's created there. And as you started off talking about the book, you do elder law. You're not doing other legal cases. You're not doing financial services. You're not coming to paint their house. I mean, it's on subject. So the bit the everyone's in the room to talk about that type of thing. So we're able to bring these assets together. And the same with the email sequence. Once someone opts in to get a copy of it, or after they've been in for the meeting, the anchoring the main points together in those further touch points. Yeah, such a great opportunity.
Yeah, and it's funny how you talk about the emails. It's one of the things that we also did is we added an image of the book and a link to get the book and our email signatures as well.
Right.
So
And
it's funny that that comes up all the time. Oh, you've written a book. I see that. Oh, yeah.
right.
It's a nice conversation
Because
starter.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And people, just as we started off saying, there's an extra credibility that goes with bringing it together on dead trees as opposed to anything else. There's an authority that naturally goes along with it. Um, the we've got another, I think we call it like a field report because it's not quite big enough to be a book, but it's a quick guide on 5 things to do once your book's completed. And one of the first things, and this actually came together because back in COVID, like in the early days of 2020, I was reaching out to a whole load of past clients saying, hey, we're all at home, we've got some extra time. Zoom is suddenly a thing that everyone knows about. So let's jump on a quick call and we'll just check in with what you're doing. And from those 20 or 30 calls, there were 5 or 6 things that really came out that I had assumed were low-hanging fruit that everyone would have done, but actually the minority of people had done them. A lot of people had gone on to more complicated things, but had missed these basic things. So things like updating your LinkedIn profile or other social media places, making sure it's on the website. The amount of people who didn't even have it on the website was crazy. Email signature, including it in there. All of these places where you are already, having the book in there and an easy friction-free way of getting a copy of it. It's one of those things that has no extra, you don't have to do any extra work to have that out there, and you don't know when it's going to intersect at the right time when someone's got that conversation going on in their head.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a great reminder for everyone as to all the different ways and uses that you can have.
Right. It's almost worth doing, and I think this is in that field report, kind of this idea of do a 50-minute focus finder or like the Pomodoro technique, whatever you want to call it. Just give yourself 20 to 50 minutes on a timer and just start jotting down all of the places where you think you could use it and just have the commitment just to keep writing for that period of time. And it's surprising, almost like a free writing exercise, surprising how your mind, once it's kind of got past the resistance of being put to work for a little bit, but you kind of get into that flow and there's really, it only takes 1 or 2 interesting ideas to pop out of that exercise and the returns are 10 years in the future, you're still getting some of those returns.
Yeah, absolutely.
We talked a bit about the online interaction and engagement with people. How much physical world stuff do you do these days? I know it's kind of changed for everyone in the last couple of years, but do you find yourself out at events and meeting people face to face more or less than before?
That's a good question. Now, predominantly right before COVID, we were all doing mostly in-person things, in-person networking events, a lot of that. Obviously, that changed during COVID. It seems to be coming back more and more so now.
Yeah,
Uh, and a lot of, so you have obviously in-person gatherings, meetings, those types of things. And then there's even a lot of the clients now, they're actually quite happy to be back in person.
right.
At least for what I do, most of the clients want to come and see someone. It, at least for me in my practice, I know there are other offices that are, hybrid offices. We'll meet if times or distance sometimes becomes an issue. We'll meet virtually, but a
Yeah,
lot of clients will still want to eventually come in person and sit down and talk.
yeah. I think that is the benefit of being forced to be digital. I mean, it just accelerated that growth so much over the last couple of years. So at least now you've got, I mean, we've worked with so many people where digital just wasn't an option before, really. Everything that they did was based around in-person stuff. And it was very difficult to try and put a funnel or a framework in place that didn't rely on someone coming in. But now, having been forced to do that for a couple of years, the opportunity now to have a digital track where that works or an in-person track where that works, it's yeah, it just gives so much more options to meet the clients where they are. And I think the books in both circumstances have a great opportunity to just accelerate and amplify that conversation a little bit.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. And it's even expanded. more individuals and even different age groups, it's expanded their ability to use technology,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
We traditionally thought that the younger generations were really technologically savvy, but I've found, and I've had 99-year-olds that were good with technology. So it
Right.
can surprise you and you go, oh, this was great, because then they can use those tools. And so obviously during COVID, some families, the best way to communicate sped up on that trend so the grandparents could talk to the grandkids and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah. Well, when we look back, even so the podcast has been going for probably a bit longer than I care to remember now, but the early episodes, I mean, probably up until around COVID, was all audio because the headache and the overhead of trying to do it on video, we could probably do it ourselves because we've got a vested interest in doing it, so that would be fine. But to try and have guests do anything video based was very, very difficult. Skype was flaky. FaceTime wasn't really an option to record anything. Some bespoke solutions were very expensive. So it really just made it more difficult. Made it much more easier than the difficult situation previously. Just thinking about the in-person situation, the um, usually when we're meeting people in person, it falls into two groups: the kind of networking and new people, or the accelerating existing relationship by meeting people who you know already. Another option for the in-person stuff is kind of like the broadcast type meeting, the meeting where you stood up in front of a room. I always like that back to Meetup, the Meetup platform. I lived in London before I was moved across to the US, and London was fantastic because throw a stone on any subject and there would be a meetup just down the road. I ran the I Love Marketing meetup in London for a number of years and attended and was a guest at like book clubs and technology clubs and all of these different places where people were. And I almost wish that there was the opportunity, this was kind of before the business was established, but I almost wish there was an opportunity to still be that environment now, because the book as a talking point would be a great jumping off point for conversations in those environments. We worked with another financial advisor who did a lot of work in yacht clubs and would use his book, Yachter's Guide to Early Retirement, as a jumping off point for the conversation within those community groups, because they would do presentations every couple of weeks to their members. So do you find, is there any opportunities like that local to you where there's an opportunity to use the book to share more value in a community group where there's an interested kind of crossover group of people?
Yeah, and I think we've done it in a sense with different, I guess, professionals or categories that have already, similar position or similar thought. We were working with a, pre-need planning professional in that sense of, are we planning for our funerals? Are we planning for our burials? And the
Right.
estate planning conversation is just an extension of that as well. And so we provided it at that point too for that type of meeting and group.
Yeah.
It's same thing that works with, right, your financial planning, your accounting people, everything that deals with financial. That is another, it's one of the crucial components of estate planning, is making it sure it all works together. Yeah,
Right.
those kind of groups all kind of go together.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an inevitability about all of those kind of from a customer point of view, a recipient's point of view. It's all of those things are going to happen, whether you like it or not. A few weeks ago, I can't remember whether it was a podcast or not, but I was having a conversation with someone who's in the business transition. Um, what's the word I'm looking for?
Exit planning.
Exit planning. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, the exit
that's
planning.
and that goes great. I mean, that's the same conversation in an extension, right?
Right.
It's your
Yeah. Yeah.
business estate plan.
Right, exactly. And they made the same point that you did. This is going to happen. It can either happen in your control or it will happen out of your control. So, I mean, might as well make the most of the one that you've got control over. Um, the feedback from clients as they read the book or at least skim the book or get the book, and using that as a jumping off point for conversations either right at the top of the funnel with new people or in the funnel as those relationships are developing. Do you ever get any feedback from recipients of the book, whether they found certain points valuable or insightful, or this made them encourage them to take a step? Is there any feedback that you get it being out there for a little while now?
Yeah, I've heard both things. I've heard a lot of people that were interested in certain concepts we talked about in the book that we introduced to them, and they're like, "Oh, I never thought about that." Or
Right,
or it brings back, like I said, they relate to a story, and they said, "Oh, I experienced something similar with my family," with
right.
a parent or a relative, and they go, "Okay, I understand, and I see the whole picture, and I
Yeah.
can see a little bit more of a greater perspective than just that one thing."
That's what I love about this type of book so much. I mean, A, because obviously it's my company. I love it because I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't love it. So it's a bit, bit of an obvious thing to say. But the real difference between a traditional book, which is the majority of people won't do, even if they've got the idea to do it, they won't because it just doesn't come up on the radar enough above the day-to-day work. So the fact that this model allows people to do something is a great thing. But the other thing, from the recipient's point of view, from the reader's point of view, it just makes it so much more likely that they're going to consume it. Because I've got a shelf full of books here. And in fact, in the last 3 weeks, I just ordered a couple of books, all of which I really, really want to read. Gary Vaynerchuk's Day Trading Attention just arrived. There was Noah Kagan's $1 Million Weekend just arrived. Um, there's another one that's on the shelf there that I can't quite see from here, and I can't even remember what it was. But again, I pressed the order button on Amazon because I really, really, really want this information in my head. But am I going to actually get to read it? I don't know. Something that's much smaller like this, that talks about one subject, something like your book that talks about the key points to securing the future, to having control over that estate planning element, it's easy to consume and the reader is much more likely to do it. And when you think about those conversations that you have with people who approach you saying, I saw this idea and I want to talk more about it, or this is an idea that I read and it resonated, so let's drill into that a little bit more. Your ability to get to that same point in the relationship with them without the book, it's very difficult because there's 25, I mean, what's the average? I don't know. I read slow. My wife could burn through something like this in 2 minutes, but I read quite slow. So 25, 30 minutes of reading something like that and understanding the beginnings of the conversation, to be able to get to that same point in the relationship, very difficult because you just can't download that much information into someone's head in in a relatively short conversation.
Yep, and that's a perfect way to explain it, and it's a lot easier for someone to be able to not have to be focused on somebody else and what they're saying and try and sort it out where they can read it, take their time, comprehend it. Right. And
Right.
I kind of laugh with you as well. Depends on their reading speed. Some will get through it faster than others.
Right. I'm saying that in the last week or two, 3 books arrived, and I think I've maybe gotten to the first chapter of one of them. I think in the same time, my wife's been to the library 3 times and kind of burnt through 300-page books.
I understand that feeling and can sympathize with you.
Right. I wonder if something else happens as well, which I never really thought about until this conversation, is when we're in a dialogue, and it happens on the podcast as well, there's even trying to be an active listener in it, and having done this for 180 episodes now, so really trying to actively listen with the intentionality of hearing the words that are coming back. There's still a small part of your brain which is consumed with, okay, at some point I'm gonna have to say something, and what's the thing I'm gonna say next? So you're always listening, and in a client situation, you're always listening, trying to pick out the things that you need to pick out in order to move it forward, because it's not just a conversation, it's a conversation with a purpose. So I hadn't particularly thought about it before, but I also wonder if part of the benefit of the book is that someone can read it purely from the point of view of reading and consuming it. They're not there listening to the same words that you're saying, thinking about what their answer is going to be, because it's one directional. It takes the pressure off them. They can be in fully absorbing mode and not needing to be in about to respond mode. So I hadn't thought about that before, but I think that also has an element which again accelerates their understanding.
No, it's a great use. And I know sometimes people still think, you know, oh, where's the catch or where's the hook if they're in person and they're meeting with us and they're saying, they're trying, you don't want to, we're not in the necessarily looking to sell our services, but they know they're here to actually, we're going to be hired at some point or not. So it's
Right.
kind of, again, that little bit of a cat and mouse game
Right. Because
where
people
it's
come
not
with
there to look. Exactly.
exactly, people come with expectations and anxieties around the things that are going on. I was on a call just before this one. It was a marketing mastermind type call. So we meet regularly and kind of pull apart other marketing pieces. So the person who was presenting today said, okay, so let's look at this page. And it was a page from years ago. They were using that as an example. And on the form, it said something along the lines of like name, email address, phone number. There was a couple of other questions. And then the button at the bottom, rather than kind of get an instant quote or download now or things like that we'd use now, it was something like an assistant will get right back to you or representative will get right back to you. And we were talking about the anxiety that brings in, because the words are, hey, you'll move on to the next step next. But anyone reading the words, a representative will get back to you immediately, subconsciously that's just, oh, my phone's about to ring for the next 2 weeks until I say yes to someone, or I've got to ghost all unknown numbers because I don't actually want to talk to this person. So that anxiety and the psychological things that are stopping people in this yes journey, we want to keep them moving down that, along that point to the in the scorecard book. I think there's QR codes in here that link to videos where I go into a little bit deeper. So I think it's on one of the videos. I've got a table, a straight line chart of the relationship capital versus the level of the ask. And you can't ask people to do too much before they've got a relationship. If you're going back to the partner example that you were given before, if you hadn't given the book to a referral partner and used that as the introduction point, if instead it was a business card, or if it was instead, oh, well, just tell the people to book a call with me, or even better, if you can book a call for them and then I'll just deal with them, all of the friction to the relationship doesn't have anywhere near the right amount of capital. And just finishing that thought, it's one of the things that I really like about your book. So the back cover, when we're talking to people, we talk about the next steps. So we always suggest, unless people have got a very strong opinion, we always suggest that people include 3 next steps where they can take that, build that relationship capital even further. So 1 is go and consume more stuff somewhere. 2 is take a small step like a checklist or an assessment. And then 3 is schedule a meeting. That's for the people where they do feel that they've passed that threshold to jump on. So your second step is grab a copy of the 3 estate planning mistakes checklist. So when you think about that as the journey capital, someone's received a copy of the book, yes, they're in the right place, but they're not quite at the point of a meeting. Being able to download something that's called the estate planning mistakes checklist, there's no baggage associated with that. It doesn't feel like they're going to walk into the office and then someone's going to lock the door behind them and they're going to, right, let's sit down and talk about it.
No traps.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, just again, another illustration of why I really love the positioning that you took with the book in terms of the single target market. You knew very clearly who it was you were talking to. The content really delivers value as to where they are in their journey and what the logical next steps are. And it shares those stories and helps people see themselves in that future solution. And then the next steps are very step-stoning that relationship towards, hey, here's multiple things that you can do, and here's lots of ways that we're going to engage with you until you're at the point where we really now need to personalize this for you and come in. And when they walk through the door, the relationship capital's through the roof and they know, like, and trust you already to a certain degree. They're predisposed to want to do what you're about to tell them to do. And it just accelerates it all so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really does help, and it leads into it. And even just in general with the book versus like we were saying in person, oh, for us in a professional service, right? And certainly what we do, there can be a little bit of that apprehension. It's like, I'm meeting with an attorney, so, oh, I don't know. And so
Right.
being able to kind of break that barrier down a little bit and say, well, yes, we know what we're doing, and yes, we're a little bit more skilled to this, what we're doing. But at this point, hey, let's have a conversation. Being able to relate to the book, relate to the stories helps.
Actually, that's a great point as well, because there is an element of like being invited to a chat with the headmaster. I mean, no matter how old you are, the last engagement that you had with a headmaster or principal of any school, I'm using British terms, the principal of any school was probably the relationship, the power dynamics within the relationship was probably very different. So as you're a new parent or as you come into that world, there is again, this psychological baggage that people bring to it. Attorneys, doctors, teachers, all of these professions, like when you think many years ago, it was only professional people who were allowed to vote and professional people who were allowed to become MPs or
Yep.
politicians. So there is this paradigmic difference. So to be able to bridge that gap, because to a certain degree, you don't really want that. You want people coming in feeling like there's a friendly, you're there as a partner to them, as a supporting professional, not someone that they've got to kind of bank manager that they've got to kind of doff their cap to. So I see with the podcast as well, I'll jump on calls with people who I haven't yet met, and they'll say, oh yeah, I've been listening for years, and oh, I remember when you said this, or remember when you said that. And it's a little bit weird sometimes, kind of still not always used to it. But that idea of just bridging the relationship, starting the conversation, being able to step people forward to get to an outcome that's the best for them. And if the best for them is them being completely relaxed going into it so that they're more open and responsive to the best ideas that you can give them. Anyway, so many reasons why bringing the knowledge that's already in your head together in the pages of a book just has such an outsized benefit compared with any other way that you can bring it together. I always say to people when we start these conversations that we'll talk for half an hour and then wrap up, and it always 45 minutes in and time flies. So appreciate taking so much of your time. And I think people will get a lot from this if they've had any thoughts about writing a book. Hopefully the way that you're using it and what you were able to do is really kind of remind them that it's a project that's within reach to people. Two quick questions to wrap up then. One, was there anything through the process that was a surprise or unexpected? I've spoken to people sometimes before and they've said the exercise of having to think about it for this period of time has been revealing in certain ways. So anything come up for you?
And so, as you said, we did this a few years ago, so we're going to have to dust off the memory bank here. Uh, it certainly, what was interesting is what I remember is the process was quite simple, and it was great to be able to get set up. I enjoyed it for me, right, where we sometimes as a legal person we become technical and we want to really focus on the nitty gritty and really
Right.
kind of get prepared. And so, trying to lift myself away from that and be able to share what we want to share, have the a roadmap to follow. That was good. And I know one of the pitfalls maybe for someone like myself or the others that are interested in writing books is when you get the manuscript back, so to speak, you can edit that till the cows come home. So you got to be careful not to.
I tell you, even owning the company and being able to touch this every single day if I wanted to, every time I look at it, oh, I need to change that, or I should fix that, I should fix something else. But no one else spots it.
That's exactly it. So that's kind of you get the perfectionist out of us sometimes, and you go, oh no, I need to change that.
Right.
Uh, so that's the kind of the big things that I remember and the little bit of a takeaway.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I like about it as well. It's the idea that, I mean, we could write all of this into a course and give people courses for a complete DIY way of doing it. But A, that's just on the technical front, that's a headache and a pain in the neck, and you don't want to deal with it if you don't have to. But B, having someone else to bounce the ideas off, and particularly Christy, who does a lot of that upfront work with people, she's very good on the story side of things. And because she's not the technical expert in the skill that you've got, her ability to kind of lift it up a level more on the consumer level, that helps a lot. Yeah, super
Yes,
interesting.
correct.
Right.
That was great.
Yeah, yeah. Um, okay, so that was the first one. And then the second one, obviously, I really want to make sure that people know where they can find out more about what you guys do for two reasons. One, to kind of follow along and see what you're doing. But I think we've got a number of clients in the Michigan area. So this idea more and more that within our community of clients, we've got people who are those complementary non-competing businesses. So hopefully there are people out there who are on the same page, and there might be a bigger referral opportunity out there for people. So where's a good place for people to find out more?
Absolutely. Our website, the easiest one is lifefocusplanning.com. That's probably the easiest way to find out more information about us and all the things that we can do and how we can help.
Perfect. And I'll put your LinkedIn connection in the show notes as well, just so people can follow through on that if they want to make
Yeah,
more of
absolutely.
a connection through that. As always, I'll put the link there in the show notes. So as everyone's listening along, they just tap on the podcast player, or if they're on the website, they can follow it through. Matt, again, just want to say thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. It's been it's really insightful to see people using it a couple of years down the track and that kind of real world feedback on what it's doing. So again, just thanks for your time today. It's been really a pleasure to dive in a little bit deeper.
Thank you so much. I've appreciated it as well. It's been a great opportunity.
Fantastic. Okay, everyone. Well, thanks for listening. As I say, or as usual, rather, check the show notes for all of the links, and then we'll catch you in the next one.